Hey, good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, I didn't get the opportunity to do a season preview for the Formula One season. Um, but based off the results from Australia, at the very least, the top half of the grid is a pretty safe prediction. I think most people would have made unless they felt like being a contrarian. In the middle of the pack is where I think people might have gone a bit off the rails with it. Um, So yeah, we're gonna go over the Australian Grand Prix and kind of loop this in as a prediction preview and kind of go from there. The rest of the season's still looking a little uncertain with races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. Very much uh, in doubt at this point. Japan is next, and depending on how things go, Japan might be next again after that. We don't know. The Australian Grand Prix started and ended with drubbing by the Mercedes pair of George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. Russell wins his first race of the season for Mercedes, and I can't imagine Kimi will be too far behind him in getting his first win, both of the season and of his career. The Mercedes team definitely looks like the team to beat by far, but Ferrari did not look as off pace as maybe we thought they would. Now, is that because Mercedes knew they didn't have any danger from behind them? Well, that's very possible too, but Ferrari looked every bit like they had the ability to potentially contend with Mercedes, maybe not at Australia, but at other tracks along the season. Um, Leclerc and Hamilton both led laps today, which I don't think many expected after watching qualifying. You can even see by how the finishing gaps go. So George won by 3 seconds thereabouts over Kimi, and that was 15 seconds back to Charles and Lewis. Uh, a lot of that could be attributed to Ferrari botching their strategy. Mercedes had a very strong strategy. They know how to work from in front. Ferrari knew they were behind the eight ball, and they tried some things that did not work. Um, but they were also fast enough to know that barring something crazy happening, they weren't going to lose third and fourth place. Right now, there's no reason to think outside of like with preseason testing. We heard of a big four. It was going to be Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull. As of now, it's looking like at best we might have a big two. This looks very much like the beginning of the last regulations where Mercedes just went out and killed everyone. Um, Toto, Wolff, and Mercedes know how to nail the regulation changes, and it just shows with what's probably going to be the first of many wins this year. Charles Leclerc ends up on the podium, third place for Ferrari. I do believe that's probably the best he was going to get today. Ferrari, I do expect will win some races this year just because of how their car balance is. It seems to almost be strong where the Mercedes isn't. And so I do expect on some of the tighter tracks for them to maybe have an advantage. Fifth place, Lando Norris. The cynic in me would say Lando's title defense is already over. Fifth place, not the McLaren had nothing better than a fifth place today, and obviously a fifth place is something that Lando should be pretty happy with, given everything that happened. Um, Disappointing, sure, but what more are you gonna do when everyone's fighting on almost a lap ahead of you, right? And I think it's pretty clear that it's not just the engines. Like the last regulation change, it was pretty obvious that the Mercedes engine was overpowered, and I thought it might have been that too. Like if I got to do a preview video, I would have had Alpine and Williams in that battle for best of the rest, and they right now are not quite there. It's looking like a Haas Racing Bulls battle. Um, but no, Lando. We'll see how McLaren can develop the car and see if they can get to within spitting distance of the Mercedes and the Ferrari. But they're definitely starting behind the eight ball. And joining them is Max Verstappen in the Red Bull team. Isaac Hadjar had a great qualifying effort. He looked way closer to Max than anyone's looked in some time. In the race, he had some engine troubles. Max fought from the back, got up to sixth place. Last car on the lead lap, which feels like it's the 90s again. Um, Strong run from Max. Definitely looks like he's in there with a shot to compete with the top two teams. If anyone's going to be able to break that stranglehold, Max is probably going to be the guy. Um, it might take all season for him to do so, but it feels foolish to say Max isn't going to win a race this year, no matter how bad the car is. Seventh place is Ollie Behrman in the Haas. Haas definitely looking like it's going to be in that fight for fifth place in the constructors' standings. Really strong run from Oliver Behrman, and they seem to have the best pairing of these best of the rest teams. Ocon to an 11th. They're the only team that really showed to have two points contending cars this weekend out of the non-top four guys. Not that that's necessarily Audi's fault, or not necessarily Nico Hulkenberg's fault, but I think the early favorite for fifth place is going to be Haas. Ollie Behrman's looking really strong to start the year, had a really great race. Eighth place is my driver of the day, honestly, Arvid Lindblad. What a great start. He faded as the race went on, as was expected, but he spent the early portion of the race in the podium. He blew past Hadjar, he was running up in the top three, and he looked every bit the Formula One driver that we were expecting him to be. I think he surpassed all expectations. Wasn't too aggressive, made the moves he needed to make, gave up the positions when they were lost, brought it home in the points. I think we're going to see Lindblad as a pretty regular point scorer this year. And what that does is that puts Liam Lawson on notice. Now, Liam Lawson's there to be a benchmark now, and the measuring stick is not high enough for Arvid Lindblad, apparently. In ninth place, we got Gabriel Bortoleto getting Audi's first points in Formula One. Good run from Bortoleto. He was the only Audi in the race. Nico Hulkenberg had a mechanical prior to race start, and Gabriel definitely brought it home for the team. Very strong run, piggybacking off his strong end of last year. Nothing to complain about. I think a victory for the Audi team was getting the car home early in a new regulation. That's always pretty difficult to do. But starting off with 2 points on the board, I think Audi and Bortoleto will be quite happy about that. 10th place is Pierre Gasly for Alpine. He's nailing the last point for Alpine Mercedes. Classic Pierre Gasly run. Fiddles his way into the points and brings it up there, even though I don't think the Alpine was strong enough to be here. Capitalized on the mistakes. Had some really tight wheel-to-wheel battles with his former teammate Esteban Ocon. Eventually, he came out on top. He strikes first blood in the teammate battle for Alpine. Good to get points early while things are in disarray before the season kind of settles down. We'll see how Alpine settles in the pecking order. But early season getting points is never going to be a bad thing. And you can always trust on Pierre to be in contention for those even when the car might not be up to snuff. Obviously, it's a little too early to say their car is not up to snuff, but Pierre always finds a way to score some points, regardless of how good or bad the car seems to be. 11th place, Esteban Ocon, first guy out of the points for Haas Ferrari. Pretty boring race for Ocon, all things considered. He got roundly beaten by his teammate, safe drive, kept it in 11th. Was going to be there to pounce if any of the guys up in front had trouble. It's too early to say anything for Ocon, but Ollie Behrman drew first blood on the teammate battle here. Ocon's going to need to come back and start scoring some points if he wants to not watch Ollie drive away from him in the driver's standings. 12th, we got the first Williams, Alex Albon. After how preseason testing went for Williams, I think the fact they got both cars across the finish line is quite the accomplishment. Definitely doesn't have the race pace, definitely doesn't have the speed. Hopefully the development will be able to get them to the point where they're fighting with the Hasses and the Racing Bulls and the Alpines, to be perfectly honest. Albon had a stronger race compared to Carlos Sainz, but just really disappointing after how much hype they had at the end of last year. It'll be interesting to see if they can develop that car and make it a little more competitive as the season goes on. They ended last year with a podium, and that looks extremely far away so far. Next up, Liam Lawson and the other Racing Bulls, roundly defeated by his rookie teammate. Things aren't looking good for Liam. He just doesn't seem to, he didn't seem to have it at his home Grand Prix, and that's disappointing for him, honestly, above anything else. You know, you always want to show out at home, and to get beaten by your rookie teammate who ends up scoring points when you don't has to be pretty demoralizing. It's up to Liam to bounce back in Japan next, though. Arvid Lindblad goes 2 for 2 on Liam, then you're going to start hearing the rumors, and they're going to get louder and louder if he can't put a stop to them himself. 14th, Franco Colapinto. Probably had the move of the race to start the race. Liam Lawson had a really, really bad start, and Franco missed him by what looked like a whisker. It was crazy. And even at the podiums, when they were in the room before the podium, you could watch the George Russell and Antonelli and Leclerc watching that, and they all looked like they were about to pee their pants. It was pretty crazy. So 14th place run, definitely not what Colapinto wanted, 2 laps down, but he definitely had the move of the race as far as I was concerned and as far as many others were concerned. 15th, Carlos Sainz Jr. Not a great, like I said earlier, not a great race for the Williams team, but bringing the cars home in one piece after their crappy preseason testing debacle. Trying to look at it positively. Bringing the cars home in one piece has to be seen as a little bit of a victory, but Carlos is not going to be happy with a P15 to start the year. 16th, the last guy who was classified is Sergio Perez for the new Cadillac team, 3 laps down. They'll be happy just to have brought the car home in one piece, brought the car home, finishing, a full race distance. It's a building year for Cadillac. No one's expecting anything more than maybe 10th place in the constructors. We already have 8 teams with points. Checo did what he needed to do. He brought the car home. Opportunities for points will probably show up as the year goes on, as cars have difficulty and issues with, mechanical problems, as we usually see with new regulation changes. So the opportunity to score a point or two will be there, but 16th was all that Perez was probably going to get unless more people fell out. And then on to the non-classified guys. Lance Stroll was in and out a lot. He ends up 15 laps down for Aston Martin. That's better than I thought they were going to do, honestly. I thought they were going to go out there for 10 laps and pull it in. Not so. Lance Stroll finishes in 17th. The fact that they can do that distance, I think, shows that they've improved it at least a little bit. Definitely still slow, definitely still off pace, definitely still not comfortable to drive, but you can see they've made some semblance of an improvement. Next up, the first quote-unquote DNF, Fernando Alonso. He withdrew the car. He was in and out of the pits a lot too. At some point, just wasn't worth it. They weren't going to gain any more positions. 19th, Valtteri Bottas and the other Cadillac. They had a fuel system issue. Valtteri was running pretty reasonably well for the Cadillac team, and these gremlins are to be expected, both with a new regulation and a brand new team. Um, the hope for Valtteri will be that he can see the checkered flags in Japan. 20th, Isaac Hadjar. He had an engine problem, and he was running really well to start the race. He was running right up in the top 5 after starting 3rd. He started 3rd? Yeah, he started 3rd. He was doing really well. Just disappointing. Definitely felt like he may not have had the measure of Max Verstappen this week for Red Bull, but he's the closest any teammate's been in quite some time, and he doesn't get the finish that reflects it, and that's pretty disappointing. 21st, Oscar Piastri crashes on the warm-ups. Not a great way to start a season, crashing in your home Grand Prix. Has to be heartbreaking for Oscar after how last year ended, and no good. You have to wonder if he's in his own head at this point. You know, he had the championship in his hands last year and it slipped away. And this year, it's not starting off too strong. And then 22nd, Nico Hulkenberg for Audi. He also had a mechanical failure before the race start, so he never saw the lights go out. Very disappointing for Audi. Very disappointing for Nico. Fortunately, they were able to get some points out of Bortoleto. They could have easily been a double point scoring finish with how Nico's pace has been. That's a missed opportunity. Down to the driver's standing, it's exactly like the finishing order for the race. We had George Russell and Kimi Antonelli leading the charge ahead of the Ferraris. George Russell is looking to stamp his authority on this championship early. He has the experience over his teammate, and he has the car over everyone else. So this is going to be George's best chance to get that championship that he craves so much. And next up, it's the constructors. Mercedes back on top. We might be in for another dominant era for Mercedes. Ferrari's going to do their best to keep them honest, but it's a Mercedes drubbing to start the year, and it's going to take a lot of work from the other teams fighting behind them to close that gap. It's going to be interesting to see how things go. Japan is next, and I do expect that more or less we're going to see this not change too much. We'll see if I'm wrong. See you next time, guys.